Why men no longer approach women. Today, I'm going to talk about the reasons why men don't approach women anymore and give you my take on the men going their own way movement. I want to talk about a topic that's been on many people's minds lately. Men going their own way movement. A lot of people are asking, is this the answer? Why don't men approach women anymore? I have some thoughts on that, and I want to share them with you in this video. A time traveler from 2022 would be amazed to see how drastically the world has changed since 1950. My mind has been mulling over this question for quite some time. Why have things changed if men were more comfortable approaching women? The odds of randomly coming to a stranger and striking up a conversation are much lower now than in the 1950s when there was no alternative to introducing yourself. Many of you probably don't remember this, but there was a time before cell phones, the internet, and social media. It was completely different from today. Like other societies with a patriarchal structure, men seeking women had to approach them directly or go to the woman's father, who usually lived nearby. In the past, men had to work much harder to win over women, and women had fewer partners to choose from. So even though they had something analogous to what we have now to talk to men from all over the world, she was limited to either the men in her community or the one guide who happened to be passing through her small town at the time and with whom she fell in love. Because of the lack of communication, more men would approach a woman, and life was more manageable. No matter how hard he tried, he didn't know if he'd see her again. So, he could lose the woman he would eventually marry if he didn't take the chance. That seems entirely out of touch with modern practice. We have no obligation to do any of that. Fewer people are talking to one another than ever before, and fewer men are making an effort to approach women. I think it's important to start talking about what happened and what it could mean for the future. While it's easier to get in touch with anyone, men are still wary of approaching women for fear of rejection and embarrassment. This indicates his confidence in the usefulness of the result. However, in today's society, ordinary men who women don't want are seen as predators, creeps, sexual assaulters, and rapists, making it more challenging for men to approach women. In that case, why would a man be interested in striking up a conversation with a woman, and why aren't men approaching women like they used to? Men, in particular, are notoriously bad at making snap judgments. Instead, we take our time calculating the pros and cons of every option before settling on a course of action. One should remember this when interacting with males. Examine the habits of males concerning marriage. Proof of this is that before committing to marriage, most men think long and hard about the pros and cons, including what they will lose if the marriage ends in divorce. Remember this when trying to approach a woman, as she has made the process so risky and unrewarding that men no longer see any point in trying. Typical women would publicly shame the average man if he tried to strike up a conversation with her in the proper manner. I've seen videos where a guy tries to approach a girl and start a conversation without sounding creepy or disrespectful, but the girl makes him look like a fool. Because she recorded the interaction while spouting the narrative that he was a creep and uploaded the video to social media for laughs and attention, I am sitting here watching that video and wondering why I would want to approach a woman today and age. Now I have to sit here and try to think of a reason for this to be happening. Women's reactions to various men's presences vary greatly. I can see that this is not very clear, so please let me break it down for you. Please give some thought to the idea of status and how people's subjective assessments of their value shape their interactions with one another. Think back to the times you were asked for money by a beggar or a homeless person who was unclean. You went on the defense immediately, refusing to engage the other person in conversation or grant their request. The same is true of women, although things are much worse now than they were a century ago. Women are understandably wary in public, given that any man could theoretically abduct them against their will. The problem arises when a woman, despite feeling at least somewhat safe in a large group of people, chooses to shame a man who has approached her publicly. This is where the issue originates. No way. Jeff Bezos is an extraordinarily wealthy and influential person in the world. A woman of her caliber would never stoop to belittling a man who is superior to her. A man's social standing and value in a woman's eyes are determined by his outward appearance, manner of speech, and approach to the woman. As we've already established, a woman's treatment of a man can vary greatly depending on her opinion of him. To get back to my original point about status, a woman will mistreat a man if she doesn't think he's better than her. This is because, in the modern era, women have lost respect for men and the stereotypical man. She risks falling in social standing if she has a reputation for mistreating average or below average men. Like Jeff Bezos, he would believe in her, but if she thinks another man is better than her, she will treat him with deference and be more open to the possibility of pursuing a romantic connection with him. Think about a meeting between a female employee and her supervisor without the janitor. In contrast to high-value men, men have seen how women treat men who are similar to them. Many men are opting out of dating altogether because of this. This is all to say that today's women have lost respect for men, and I think most men are aware of this and have therefore chosen to avoid conversation with modern women as a result. Therefore, men are no longer taken in by women's ploys because they know women's attitudes toward them can only go downhill from here. It's becoming increasingly apparent to men that trying to approach women is usually unsuccessful, one in which they put their name and freedom in danger. As you may be aware, men have had the police called on them simply for approaching a woman who didn't like them, and this has led many men to conclude that it's best to avoid approaching women altogether. Men keep telling me I should forget about it and stop trying to pick up females. Why would men go through with it if there's nothing in it for them? It's absurd that men now have to weigh the risks of approaching a woman and decide that the juice isn't worth the squeeze, given that women weren't this out of order simply because a man wanted to talk to them before the 1990s. With that out of the way, we can all agree that contemporary women's views of men are repulsive. Let's start with finding out if modern women can even be reached. First impressions matter. If you don't seem approachable, people won't even come up to you, let alone start a conversation with you. Modern women often feel like walking around with something stuck up their buttocks. If a woman gives off the vibe that she doesn't want to talk to anyone, especially men, then fewer men will approach her. Therefore, men avoid these women, and telling a woman she needs to smile is a sign that she is a misogynist and a woman hater. It's understandable why men shy away from these ladies. I can relate to wanting to talk to a woman but being afraid to because she had painted her face to look like the devil. Women today rarely bother making an effort to smile or appear friendly in social situations, because most of them always look like they're about to cast a spell when they rest, which honestly scares or turns off most men. Men have stopped approaching women and are instead preferring to isolate themselves. If you saw a man who seemed perpetually enraged as if he might lose his composure and become violent, would you approach him and try to strike up a conversation? Whether a woman is at work or home, she is unlikely to face the same obstacles. If a man sees a woman he finds attractive but acts as though she doesn't want to talk to anyone, he should leave her alone. He'll assume she's not interested in chatting, but today's women are unconcerned and open to trying new things, so he'll probably come around. In a similar vein, men will not approach women, and that will be that, but when men don't approach women, the women will pout and complain that men aren't interested in them. And now, ladies, I turn to you for advice. You can either give men the impression that you want to be approached or harden up and make men want to avoid you at all costs. Gentlewomen, you have a choice. Just do whatever the hell you want. Last but not least, I think men aren't approaching women because they've decided it's not worth it to be in a committed relationship with a woman. For example, men have been told that they are not interested in hiring medical assistants. I don't go out with ugly guys who can't afford X, Y, or Z. If you don't have any of those things, we shouldn't be talking. It's understandable that men would be fed up with current affairs and have no desire to initiate contact with women. For some men, it's as simple as having had enough of modern women, who they feel cheat on them more frequently and in more relationships than ever before, and who they feel treat them less and less over time. Because men aren't getting severe, there's no point in trying to woo women with a romantic overdose. Due to male-centric spaces like this YouTube channel, men are finally learning to see things from women's perspectives. They don't want to spend their lives trying to get a woman, and more are realizing that the odds are stacked against them. Women will only get worse, so we have no choice but to fortify our current location to preserve our peace and autonomy in the face of an increasingly hostile gender. We don't mean a romantic interest, we don't need a spouse, and we can get along just fine without talking to women. Given that this is not how things will function in the foreseeable future, our men have stopped approaching women because we no longer care about dating and marriage. After all, there is no longer any benefit to doing so. This is the way things are going to be done from now on. Any of you guys still looking for love have already been judged in my mind. I have no problem with your dating life, so feel free to go on dates as much as you like. However, you should know that this conduct can get you arrested, treated rudely in public, and falsely accused of wrongdoing. If you choose to partake in action despite knowing the potential risks, you accept full responsibility for any outcomes. Be sure to check out my other videos to learn more about dating life in modern times with the MGTOW lifestyle.